All over the planet are giant megaliths that have left experts pondering their existence. Some of these impressive monuments have managed to survive for thousands of years and prove that our ancestors were capable of incredible feats. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at these 5 huge megaliths. Egypt Unfinished Obelisk. An obelisk is customarily characterized as a tall and thin landmark, with 4 sides merging to a smaller than expected pyramidal shape at the top. Perhaps one of the most famous ancient megaliths found in Egypt is that of the Unfinished Obelisk. The massive stone has fascinated archaeologists for years, and they have said that once it was finished, it was going to be over 37 meters in height. This giant obelisk also weighs over 1,000 tons, while others have suggested it weighs over 1,250 tons. The reason this giant structure was never used is because the ancient Egyptians had difficulty removing the block of stone. As they attempted to move it, a giant crack appeared down the structure. After this, the stone was no longer able to be used, so it was left there where it was. Due to its size and weight, the structure hasn't changed much since ancient times. In fact, to this day, you can still go and visit the site where it's located. Every year, thousands of people travel to marvel at its size. It's been estimated by Egyptologists that the stone was abandoned during the 18th dynasty. Archaeologists have said that the amount of man-hours that would have been put into this stone would have been likely to have been in the thousands, with the sad part being it didn't even get used. These giant structures were often used by the ancient Egyptians and were often placed at the entrances of things like temples. These giant stone structures would have stood proud outside of Egyptian monuments and would have been proof of their capabilities. It's incredible to think how the ancient Egyptians only had basic tools and yet were able to create such massive structures. One of the problems the workers faced when building these massive structures were looking for stones that had no damage. They would have to ensure the whole rock didn't have any uneven surfaces. If it did, the whole process would have been left. Just like what happened with the Unfinished Obelisk. Although ancient Egypt was an impressive civilization, it did get conquered by other nations, and what's sad is that some of these obelisks have turned up in other countries. There are said to be fakes, but up to 25 of them have been confirmed as the real deal. As of right now, only 8 remain in Egypt. Giant monoliths at Baalbek. The most mysterious ruins of the Roman Empire lie in the city of Baalbek in Lebanon. During the Roman era, the city of Baalbek was known as Heliopolis, or the City of the Sun. This city featured a huge temple and various other buildings. Modern-day archaeologists have been able to identify most of the buildings and their usage, but it's the giant stone that have left researchers with more questions than answers. Some of these stones are considered to be from an even earlier period. But one thing that is known is that these giant stones are some of the biggest megaliths on the planet. There are several of these giant stones here, some of which weigh in the region of more than 1,000 tons each. The largest stone is estimated to weigh over 1,500 tons. It's considered to be the largest cut stone in the world, and how it was moved and worked on is still up for debate. Another incredible fact that has baffled archaeologists is the amazing precise positioning and fitting of these stones. To give you an idea, some of these stones are fitted with such accuracy that it is almost impossible to insert even a needle between them. Many people believe that some of the earlier civilizations were way more advanced than first thought, and that these creations prove this. Obelisk of Aksum. The Obelisk of Aksum, which can be found in the city of Aksum in Ethiopia, is a 4th century phonolite stele, weighing 160 tons and measuring over 24 meters in height. The stele is found alongside other stelae in the city of Aksum. Erecting this obelisk would have been no easy task. Researchers have suggested that this site functioned as markers for underground burial chambers. The Obelisk of Aksum is designed to represent a 9-story Aksumite building. with 2 false doors that are carved at the base of the stele, taking the shape of wooden entryways into an Aksumite home. The city of Aksum was converted to Christianity by King Ezana in the 4th century. This move saw the end of the erection of burial stelae, including pagan practices. Over a period of time, most of these stelae fell to the ground, and the Obelisk of Aksum eventually fell too around the 16th century, probably due to the effect of earthquakes, and since the city has long been a Christian society, it was left to deteriorate. Only King Ezana's stele remained erect. After many centuries, Italian soldiers found the collapsed and broken Obelisk of Aksum around the end of 1935. The pieces were taken back as loot to Italy by the fascist regime. The monument was eventually re-erected in Ethiopia near King Ezana's stele and was unveiled on the 4th of September 2008. Easter Island Heads. In ancient Polynesian myths, it was believed that the Polynesian king had 7 children of whom were born with magical abilities and were seen as giants. Fearing their great power and their short tempers, the Polynesian king quickly sent his sons away to be banished and cast them onto Easter Island. It appears that this myth can be confirmed when analysing the large stone structures on the island. The majority of the large stone structures known as the Easter Island Heads all seem to face inward towards the island, to offer a sort of overwatching protection. However, there appears to be 7 large Easter Island Heads that face in the direction of the Polynesian island, almost as if to reference the origin of the 7 suns. It's interesting to note that though Easter Island myths do not seem to reference the origin of the Polynesian islands, it talks at length about giants and the creation of the Easter Island Heads by the giants. Given the megalithic structure of the heads, even in the modern day, it's been impossible to replicate the statues on such a limited location. Though there have been many attempts to create similar statues and devise ways of transporting them, not a single theory to this day appears to be reliable or valid in its hypothesis. It could very well be that these 7 sons of whom were born as giants created these megalithic structures eons ago. It's assumed by many that Polynesian people were the first to reach places such as Easter Island. An interesting discovery made during the 1950s, which suggested that buried artifacts could prove that earlier civilizations lived on the island. They suggest this is due to other ancient artwork being discovered from across the globe and looking eerily similar to some of the designs that can be found on Easter Island. Another interesting discovery that was made during the 1970s was that of the eye sockets. When explorers arrived on the island, they had wondered if these statues ever possessed eyes. It turned out that a team of archaeologists examined one of the statues and noticed that the eye sockets most likely had coral eyes, and these would have had black obsidian or red pupils to give them a bold effect. In later years, researchers have been able to recreate what the statues would have looked like when the natives were living on the island. Interestingly, researchers were able to come to this conclusion by finding white coral pieces in various sites on the island. Researchers who have dedicated a large amount of time studying the creations have also come forward and said they don't know who carved these statues. Although these statues are very famous, researchers have said it's been tough to pinpoint which communities were responsible for the carvings. During the statue's creation, it was suggested that there were different clans living on the island, and this has made it tough to pinpoint who was behind the creations. Stoneways to Sri Lanka. Many Indians grow up hearing the stories of Ramayan, which is an ancient Hindu poem that spoke of a magical bridge being constructed from large floating stones that stretch from the southern parts of India all the way to the northern part of Sri Lanka that was placed by the Hindu god Rama. What is absolutely mysterious about this claim is that no evidence of stones had been found until the new state-of-the-art NASA satellites looked towards the region of northern Sri Lanka to notice large stones resting on the sandbar underwater that stretched 30 miles from Sri Lanka to the southern part of India, connecting the massive landmasses. Researchers immediately began carbon dating the stones in an effort to better understand the time frame of the formation stones and whether or not they had formed naturally. This theory was almost immediately proven to be false, as evidence of carbon dating showed that the stones had been placed in that location artificially, given the fact that the large stones on top of the sandbar were of an older material than the sand beneath it, leading research scientists to believe that the rocks were carved from different areas and moved to that location by ancient people. The ability for the ancestors of the region to have constructed a massive 30-mile megalithic structure of stones weighing thousands of tons appears to lead many to believe that the ancients had advanced technologies that we could not fathom today. Even more interestingly are all the ancient Hindu accounts of the bridge and the gods forming these magical pathways via flying machines they would ride on. But what do you think of these 5 ancient megaliths? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.